She stood alone in the dimly lit barracks, the low hum of fluorescent lights flickering overhead. The other recruits had gathered in small groups, their voices low but sharp with whispers and snide remarks. Kara Morgan, call sign Phoenix, felt their eyes on her, not with respect, but with judgment. Her scars told a story they didn't want to hear. Deep burns that traced her arms and neck, faded but still raw in appearance. The visible proof of a past they couldn't understand. One recruit, a fresh-faced private barely out of boot camp, laughed quietly but loud enough for Kara to hear. "Looks like she's wearing her defeat on her skin," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "What, you think those scars make you some kind of hero?" More like a walking warning. Kara didn't respond. She had heard it all before. The whispers, the judgments, the pity hidden beneath the words. But she also knew something they didn't. Those scars weren't a symbol of weakness. They were proof she had survived when others hadn't. Proof that she had risen from fire, just like her call sign suggested. The mocking recruit continued, his voice rising just enough to carry through the murmur of the room. "You don't belong here. You're not like us. You're broken." Laughter bubbled from a few nearby soldiers, but it was the kind of laughter born from ignorance, not strength. Kara's fists clenched at her sides, but her face remained calm. Inside, a storm was brewing, a mix of anger, hurt, and determination. She wasn't broken. Far from it. She was Phoenix, the bird that rises from ashes, reborn and stronger than before. And soon, they would all see it. The barracks door creaked open, silencing the chatter instantly. The room froze. Major General Elise Hawthorne entered, her presence commanding and unyielding. Years of service etched into the lines of her face, the weight of leadership resting in her steady gaze. She was a legend, known for her Cold War exploits and no-nonsense approach to discipline. The mocking recruit's smirk faltered as the general's eyes scanned the room. Her gaze landed on Kara and something shifted in the air. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Roll call by call sign," the general said, her voice sharp and clear. One by one, the recruits responded. "Falcon, Raven, Eagle." The names carried weight. Call signs earned through grit and sacrifice. Then came the moment that froze the room. "Phoenix," the general called. The mocking recruit's confident facade cracked. His eyes widened. A slow, cold sweat spread across his brow as the name hit him like a blow. He recognized it, had read about it during his training, but never believed it was real, never thought it belonged to someone right here in front of him. Kara stepped forward, her posture steady and proud despite the scarred skin beneath her uniform. The general's gaze never wavered. "Sergeant Kara Morgan," the general said, "known as Phoenix. Her courage in Afghanistan saved lives. More than one unit owes their survival to her quick thinking and relentless spirit." The silence stretched. The mocking recruit's mouth opened and closed, words failing him. The others looked on with newfound respect, some even with awe. Kara's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the validation she had long sought. She had fought battles in the field, but this moment, this recognition from the highest ranks, was a victory of a different kind. The general's voice softened just a fraction. "Scars don't mark weakness. They mark survival, resilience, and strength. Sergeant Morgan embodies all of these." The recruit who had mocked her swallowed hard, his earlier arrogance replaced by humility. Slowly, he stepped forward and extended a hand. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't know. I didn't understand." Kara looked at him for a long moment before accepting the gesture. "Respect isn't about appearances," she replied. "It's earned. Through action, through sacrifice." The tension in the room eased, replaced by a growing sense of unity. Other recruits moved closer, eager to shake her hand or simply nod in acknowledgement. The walls of judgment crumbled, and for the first time in a long time, Kara felt seen. Not just for her scars, but for the strength behind them. Later that night, Kara sat alone in the quiet barracks, tracing the faded lines of her scars with her fingers. They were reminders, not just of pain, but of survival and the battles she had fought both on the field and within herself. Her thoughts drifted back to that day in Afghanistan, the firefight that changed everything. The ambush, the explosions, the desperate radio calls, how she had taken command when her squad leader went down, directing medics to the wounded, holding off the enemy until help arrived. The burns were a small price to pay for those lives saved. Her phone buzzed, a message from the general. It read simply, "Proud of you, Phoenix. Keep leading." Kara smiled softly. The path ahead was still hard. The scars would never fully fade. But now she carried more than just pain. She carried respect. And with it, the strength to rise again. The mocking recruit had been the first obstacle, but not the last. The real battle was earning her place among soldiers who saw beyond the surface. Soldiers who understood what it truly meant to survive, to lead, and to fight with every scar as a reminder of courage. Kara stood up, squared her shoulders, and prepared for the next day's challenges. The fire that had nearly claimed her had only made her stronger. And now, with the general's voice behind her and the truth of her scars known, she was ready to show the world what a phoenix really was. The night outside was still and dark. But inside the barracks, a new light burned bright, steady, unyielding, and fierce. Kara Morgan, the phoenix, was rising, and no one would doubt her again. Kara Morgan sat quietly in the corner of the mess hall, her gaze distant as she watched the new recruits laugh and chatter around her. The voices felt like echoes from another world, one where she was just a soldier, not the woman with scars that told a story most wouldn't believe. The walls around her seemed to close in, but she welcomed the solitude. It gave her a moment to remember who she was and why she had chosen this path. She thought back to her childhood, growing up in a small town where military service was a family tradition. Her father was a general, a man of great discipline and quiet pride. He never spoke much about the sacrifices required, but Kara saw them all, the long absences, the distant phone calls, the medals hanging on the walls, like silent witnesses to battles she hadn't yet fought. As a girl, Kara admired her father's strength but feared the weight it carried. She wanted to be strong, too, not just in body but in spirit. Joining the military was her way of stepping out from under his shadow and proving she was more than just a general's daughter. She wanted to earn her own scars, her own call sign. Her mother had been her quiet supporter, always reminding Kara that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the choice to face it every day. "You carry more than their expectations," her mother had said once. "You carry the power to change their minds." Kara smiled faintly, remembering those words as she ran her fingers over the raised scars on her forearm. Those marks weren't just pain. They were proof she had survived a firefight in Afghanistan that had nearly claimed her life. The memory was sharp and vivid. The unit had been on a routine patrol when the ambush hit. Explosions tore through the silence, gunfire ricocheting off the rocky cliffs around them. Kara's squad leader had fallen early, and chaos had erupted. Amid the confusion, Kara took command. She ordered her team to retreat to a safer position while radioing for medical evac. One moment, she had been running full speed across a burning field, dodging shrapnel and gunfire. The next, an explosion had thrown her against the ground. Pain exploded across her body, flames licking at her uniform and skin. But she fought through it, dragging a wounded soldier to cover before collapsing herself. Days later, in a field hospital, Kara woke to see the faces of her comrades, grateful, relieved, and proud. Her scars were a heavy price, but they were the price of survival. She earned her call sign Phoenix in those flames, rising again when most would have fallen. Back in the present, Kara's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Lieutenant Jenkins, a seasoned officer who had seen many soldiers rise and fall. He approached her with a steady gaze, nodding in quiet acknowledgement. "Phoenix," he said, using her call sign with respect. "The general spoke highly of you today." Kara nodded, appreciating the rare praise. "Thank you, sir." Jenkins looked around the mess hall, then lowered his voice. "There's talk among the recruits. Some still doubt what you've been through. Don't let it get to you." Kara's jaw tightened. "I'm used to it." "Scars aren't always visible," He smiled knowingly. That's the truth. The ones they see are only the beginning. The real battles are the ones inside. Kara looked up, meeting his eyes. I'm ready for whatever comes next. As Jenkins walked away, Kara reflected on the challenges ahead. This new unit was different, specialized, demanding, and full of soldiers with their own ghosts. She knew she would have to prove herself again and again, not just with her past but with her skill and leadership. Later that day, she found herself standing before a wall of photographs, black and white portraits of soldiers from generations past. Some wore World War II uniforms, others from the Cold War. Their faces were a mixture of pride and pain, young men and women frozen in time. Kara's eyes settled on a photo of a woman in a pilot's uniform, her gaze fierce and determined. This woman, she learned, was General Elise Hawthorne during her early service. A trailblazer, a legend. Kara felt a sudden kinship. Like Hawthorne, she was fighting not just external enemies, but the barriers that came with being a woman in a world that often doubted her. The scars, the sacrifices, they were part of a long line of warriors who refused to be forgotten. That night, Kara lay awake in her bunk, the weight of the day settling over her. The scars itched beneath her sleeves, reminders of pain and resilience. She thought about the mocking recruit who had challenged her, the faces of her team, and the general's unexpected recognition. The road ahead would be long and filled with trials. But Kara Morgan Phoenix was ready. She had faced fire before, and she would face it again. Her story was far from over. And this time, she would write it on her own terms. The morning air was sharp and cold as Kara laced up her boots, the stiff leather pressing against her calloused feet. The training ground stretched before her, rows of obstacle courses, the steady pounding of boots echoing like thunder. The new unit was different from anything she had faced before. This wasn't just basic training. It was a crucible designed to test every ounce of endurance, every shred of willpower. Kara tightened her grip on the strap of her pack, feeling the weight settle on her shoulders. Around her, the recruits moved with a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. Some were seasoned soldiers, others fresh-faced and green. But all of them had one thing in common: doubt. The same doubt Kara had faced when she first arrived, when the whispers about her scars followed her like a shadow. Today, that doubt was louder than ever. "Come on, Phoenix!" a voice sneered from behind her. The mocking recruit was back. Private Mitchell, the same one who had laughed at her scars in the barracks. His tone was sharp, cutting through the morning chill like a blade. "You really think those burned arms make you tough? They make you fragile. A liability." Kara didn't turn. Instead, she inhaled deeply, letting the cold air fill her lungs. She had learned early on that engaging with bullies was a trap. Let them talk, she thought. Their words meant nothing. The training officers blew their whistles, signaling the start of the first drill, a grueling run through the mud-filled trenches, under barbed wire, and over towering walls. Kara adjusted her helmet and took her place at the start line. As the whistle blew, the group surged forward. Kara's legs pumped steadily, her breath controlled despite the cold burn in her lungs. The mud sucked at her boots. The barbed wire scraped at her gear, but she pushed on. Each obstacle a challenge she was determined to conquer. Private Mitchell struggled alongside her, his sneers fading into heavy breaths of exhaustion. Kara caught his glance, a flicker of frustration mixed with grudging respect. Midway through the course, Kara's pack snagged on a piece of wire. She yanked it free, but a sudden twist sent a sharp pain through her shoulder, the scar tissue beneath her uniform protesting. For a moment, doubt crept in. Could she keep going? But then she remembered the firefight in Afghanistan, the explosions, the cries for help, the moment she took command. That memory fueled her. She pushed past the pain, stronger than before. The course ended with a sprint up a steep hill, the finish line marked by a fluttering flag. Kara reached it, chest heaving, sweat mingling with the grime on her face. She turned to see the other recruits, some collapsed, some still struggling, but all watching her. The mocking recruit, surprisingly, gave a curt nod. It wasn't praise, but it was acknowledgement. Training intensified over the following days. Early mornings turned into late nights filled with drills, tactical simulations, and weapons handling. Kara found herself leading squad exercises, her voice steady and commanding despite the relentless pace. But the tension with Mitchell didn't fade. He challenged her in every drill, questioning her decisions, trying to undermine her authority. It was clear he resented a woman with scars standing tall where he struggled. One evening, after a long day of training, Kara sat with another recruit, Emily, a young medic with a quick smile and steady hands. Emily had noticed the tension and offered quiet support. "You're stronger than they give you credit for," Emily said softly. "They don't see what you've been through." Kara smiled, grateful for the friendship. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever shake the past." Emily shook her head. "Your scars aren't a burden. They're a map, showing the way you've survived. You inspire people, whether they realize it or not." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm, an urgent call for all personnel to assemble in the briefing room. Kara's heart quickened. The general was arriving for an inspection. The room buzzed with nervous energy. Recruits straightened their uniforms, adjusting gear and smoothing fatigues. Kara stood tall, her scars hidden beneath layers of fabric, but impossible to erase. The general entered with her usual commanding presence. Her eyes swept the room, sharp and assessing. Kara felt a strange mix of fear and anticipation. The mocking recruit was among the first to respond to the general's orders, eager to impress. Kara kept her focus, ready to prove herself not just to the general, but to herself. During the inspection, the general asked questions, tested knowledge, and observed discipline. When it came time for roll call by call signs, the room fell silent. "Falcon," the general called. "Here," came the reply. "Raven, here, then." The general's voice dropped to a tone that sent chills down the spines of many. Phoenix, the mocking recruit, froze instantly, his earlier bravado replaced by a look of shock and disbelief. Kara stepped forward, steady and unyielding. The general's gaze met hers. "Sergeant Morgan, your leadership under fire is well known. Your scars tell a story of survival and sacrifice." The room was silent, the weight of the moment settling on everyone. Kara felt a surge of pride, but also a deep resolve. This was no longer about proving herself to others. It was about living up to the legacy those scars represented. The next days were a test not just of skill, but of character. Kara found herself mentoring others, sharing lessons born in battle and forged in fire. Mitchell's hostility softened, replaced by a reluctant respect that grew with every challenge faced side by side. As the training drew closer to its end, Kara knew the true mission was only beginning. The battlefield awaited, unpredictable and unforgiving, but now she carried more than scars. She carried a story, a legacy of courage that no one could mock or deny, and she was ready to write the next chapter. The sun was barely above the horizon when Kara Morgan stood at attention on the tarmac, the chill of early morning seeping through her uniform. The sharp roar of helicopters slicing through the sky echoed in the distance. Today marked the beginning of their deployment, an operation unlike any Kara had ever led. The unit assembled in tight formation, their faces a mix of determination and anxiety. These were not just drills or training exercises anymore. This was real. Lives depended on every decision, every move, every breath. Major General Elise Hawthorne approached, her presence steady and commanding. "This mission is critical," she began, her voice low but unwavering. "We are deploying to a covert region where intelligence suggests an insurgent cell is planning attacks on Allied forces and civilians. Your objective, locate and dismantle the network before it's too late." Kara's heart raced. She recalled every lesson, every scar, every moment that had brought her here. This was the test she had been preparing for, one that demanded more than courage. It demanded clarity, resilience, and sacrifice. "Sergeant Phoenix," the general continued, locking eyes with Kara, "you will lead this team. Your experience, your strength, and your scars tell me you're ready." The recruits around her shifted, glancing at Kara with a newfound respect. Even Private Mitchell, whose earlier animosity had melted into reluctant acceptance, stood silently, the weight of responsibility settling over him. Kara nodded, her voice steady. "We won't fail, ma'am." As the helicopters landed, the team disembarked into dense, unforgiving terrain, jungle thick with humidity and shadows. Every step was cautious, every sound amplified in the stillness. Kara's senses sharpened, the years of combat instincts taking over. The first night was restless, filled with whispered conversations and the occasional rustle of leaves. Kara reviewed maps and intel, plotting their next moves under the flicker of a dim lamp. Suddenly, a crackle over the radio broke the silence. "Unidentified movement, north perimeter," the voice warned. Kara's pulse quickened. She signaled her squad to prepare. Shadows shifted in the darkness as they moved quietly, weapons ready. Through the underbrush, they spotted figures, armed, moving with stealth. Kara's breath caught. This was the insurgent cell. The mission had become deadly real. A firefight erupted. Bullets zipped through the air, mingling with shouts and orders. Kara's voice rose above the chaos, directing her team with calm precision, despite the searing pain in her burned shoulder. A reminder that scars weren't just memories. They were wounds still alive. She covered her squad, returning fire, eyes locked on every movement. The insurgents scattered, but Kara's team pressed forward, determined to secure the area. In the aftermath, they found documents and weapons caches, proof they had struck a significant blow. But the victory was bittersweet. One of their own lay wounded, a sharp reminder of the cost of war. As medics worked swiftly, Kara knelt beside the injured soldier, offering words of comfort. The scars on her own arms felt heavier in that moment, a silent bond between survivors. Days blurred into nights as the mission continued, tracking leads, securing intel, and engaging intense encounters that tested every skill. Kara's leadership was unyielding, her team growing stronger under her guidance. But the toll was visible. Fatigue shadowed their faces, and the weight of responsibility pressed down like the humid jungle air. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Kara received an encrypted message from General Hawthorne. It was a warning. The insurgent cell was planning a large-scale attack within hours. Time was running out. Kara gathered her team. "This is it," she said, voice steady but urgent. "We move at dawn. Failure is not an option." The night before the operation, Kara lay awake, thoughts swirling. The scars on her skin seemed to pulse with the memories of past battles and sacrifices. She thought of her father, the general who had taught her discipline, and her mother's quiet strength. She thought of the mocking recruit who had doubted her, now standing beside her as an ally. Tomorrow they would face danger head-on. But Kara was no longer just a soldier with scars. She was a leader, a phoenix rising to meet the fire once more. At first light, the team moved silently through the dense jungle, each step bringing them closer to the heart of the insurgent network. Kara's mind was sharp, her commands clear and precise. They reached the target compound just as the sun broke through the canopy. The operation unfolded with deadly efficiency, breaching doors, securing hostages, and neutralizing threats. In the heat of the battle, Kara faced a sudden ambush. Bullets tore through the air, and in the chaos, she saw Private Mitchell falter. Without hesitation, Kara moved to shield him, taking a bullet meant for him. The searing pain was immediate, but her focus never wavered. She signaled her team to push forward, refusing to let the wound slow her down. The insurgent leader was captured, and the cell dismantled. The mission was a success, but the cost was etched deeply into Kara's flesh and soul. As medics tended to her injuries, Kara lay back, breathing hard. Her scars had saved her once again, not just the ones on her skin, but the ones within her spirit. Days later, back at base, the general visited Kara's bedside. Her expression was a mix of pride and solemnity. "You carried this team through hell and back," she said softly. "Your scars tell a story of courage few can match." "You're a hero, Sergeant Morgan." Kara looked up, a weary smile crossing her face. The scars remained. But so did her strength. She had faced doubt, pain, and fire, and emerged stronger every time. Phoenix had risen once again. The sterile hospital room smelled of antiseptic and quiet determination. Kara lay on the narrow bed, her arm wrapped in bandages, the pain a dull ache beneath the surface. Around her, the hum of machines and the soft footsteps of medics created a rhythm that matched the steady beat of her thoughts. Recovery was a battlefield of its own, one she hadn't anticipated would test her as fiercely as the jungle. She stared at the ceiling, tracing the cracked paint with tired eyes. The bullet wound had been severe, deep enough to damage muscles and nerves. The doctors warned her about the long road ahead, about the possibility that her combat days might be over. The words hung heavy in the air, but Kara wasn't ready to surrender. Her scars, both old and new, told stories of survival and strength. Now the challenge was healing, not just the body, but the spirit. Every flare of pain reminded her of that fateful morning when she had shielded Private Mitchell. That act of sacrifice had shifted something in the unit, knitting them together in ways words never could. Mitchell had visited her daily, his face uncharacteristically sober. "I owe you my life," he said one afternoon, his voice thick with emotion. "I was a fool to doubt you. You're the reason we made it back." Kara managed a faint smile. We all did our part. Outside the window, the sun moved slowly across the sky, marking the passage of time. The base buzzed with activity. Soldiers training, helicopters lifting off, voices carrying over the hum of military life. Kara felt a pang of frustration watching from the sidelines, itching to return to the field. General Hawthorne paid her regular visits. Each time, the general's presence was a reminder of the legacy Kara was part of. A chain of women who had fought battles, broken barriers, and earned respect in a world that often underestimated them. "You've shown more courage than most," the general said one day. "But courage isn't enough. You'll need patience, resilience." Kara nodded, absorbing the wisdom. She was learning that the fight didn't end with the mission. Healing, rebuilding, and finding purpose were battles fought within. One evening, the room filled with the soft murmur of visitors. Family and friends had come to offer support. Her mother's eyes held pride and worry in equal measure. "You've always been strong," she said softly. "But don't forget to be gentle with yourself." Kara reached out, clasping her mother's hand. The weight of expectation had been heavy all her life, but moments like this reminded her that strength was also found in vulnerability. News came that her unit was being redeployed soon. Kara's heart tightened. She wanted to go, to stand with her team, but the doctors insisted on more rest. Determined not to let her body dictate her future, Kara began physical therapy, grueling sessions that tested her limits. Every movement was a battle against pain and doubt. Yet with each small victory, a step without a limp, a weight lifted, her confidence grew. She wasn't just healing. She was preparing to rise again. During therapy, Kara connected with other wounded soldiers, sharing stories of loss and hope. Among them was Captain Lena Ruiz, a pilot with scars of her own, both visible and hidden. "We carry these marks as reminders," Lena said one day. "But they don't define us. What defines us is how we live beyond them." Kara found comfort in those words. Her scars were chapters of a story still unfolding, a story of resilience, leadership, and hope. One afternoon, the general called Kara to her office. The walls were lined with photographs of past heroes, men and women who had shaped history with bravery and sacrifice. "You've been recommended for a special assignment," the general said, sliding a dossier across the desk. "It's a covert operation, demanding skill, discretion, and heart. We need someone who understands sacrifice and can inspire others." Kara opened the file, scanning the details, a mission that blended intelligence gathering with frontline action, requiring her to step into a role that was as much about trust as it was about tactics. The scars on her arm tingled as she considered the offer. It was a chance to prove that she was more than her injuries, more than the sum of her scars. "I'm ready," Kara said firmly. The general smiled, a rare softness in her gaze. "I never doubted you." Back in her room, Kara packed light, gear, weapons, and memories stitched into every fold of fabric. She thought of her team, her family, and the countless women who had paved the way. As she prepared to step back into the unknown, Kara Morgan embraced the truth she had learned over years of battle and healing. Scars were not weaknesses, but badges of honor. They were proof that she had lived, fought, fallen, and risen. Phoenix was ready to fly once more. The night was thick with silence, broken only by the distant hum of the base's generators and the faint rustle of leaves outside Kara's window. She sat alone, studying the dossier laid out before her. The mission details were classified, high risk and sensitive, involving deep infiltration into enemy territory where failure wasn't just an option, it was a death sentence. Yet Kara's scars tingled with anticipation. This was more than a mission. It was a chance to prove herself beyond the battlefield, to become the leader she was born to be. Her thoughts drifted to the faces of her unit, the soldiers she'd fought alongside, bled with, and learned from. She wasn't going in blind. She had allies, trusted ones. But this assignment required a different kind of strength: stealth, intelligence, and emotional resilience. The morning sun barely cut through the thick fog as Kara arrived at the clandestine briefing room deep within the base. Inside, a small group of operatives awaited, their faces masked with a blend of focus and nerves. Among them was Captain Lena Ruiz, the pilot she had bonded with during recovery, and Lieutenant Sarah Chen, an expert in covert operations known for her icy precision. The general's voice was calm, but firm. "This mission is critical. Intelligence indicates a network supplying weapons to hostile insurgents. We need to dismantle it quietly before open conflict erupts." Kara nodded, absorbing every word. The plan was complex, a series of undercover meetings, surveillance, and tactical strikes. Failure would mean lives lost, trust shattered, and years of effort undone. As the briefing ended, Kara felt the weight of responsibility settle over her like a second skin. Her scars weren't just on her arms anymore. They were etched into every decision, every calculated risk. The team moved swiftly, adopting new identities, slipping through shadows like ghosts. Kara's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and resolve as she donned the guise of a local aid worker, a role that required blending empathy with subterfuge. Days turned into weeks as they infiltrated deeper into the network. Kara found herself walking a razor's edge, balancing the warmth of human connection with the cold necessity of espionage. She met locals affected by the conflict, families torn apart, children caught in the crossfire. Their stories fueled her resolve, reminding her that this mission was about more than just strategy. It was about saving lives. But danger lurked everywhere. One evening, while gathering intel at a remote village, Kara sensed eyes watching her. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled. She slipped away, heart racing, just in time to avoid an ambush. Back at base, the team regrouped, tension thick in the air. Lieutenant Chen's usual calm cracked. "They're on to us," she said grimly. "We've been compromised." Kara's mind raced. Every move was scrutinized now, every whisper a potential threat. Trust became a precious commodity. That night, as the team prepared for a critical strike on the network's main supply depot, Kara reviewed the mission once more. Her scars throbbed, a physical reminder of past battles, but also of survival and resilience. The operation began before dawn. Under cover of darkness, the team approached the target. The air was heavy with anticipation. Kara's breath was steady, her senses razor-sharp. They breached the compound with swift precision, neutralizing guards, disabling weapons caches, and securing vital intelligence. But then, alarms blared, shattering the silence. Enemy forces surged, and chaos erupted. Kara fought with fierce determination, her leadership guiding the team through the maelstrom. Bullets tore through the night, explosions lighting up the sky. Amid the firefight, Kara spotted an enemy combatant aiming at Lieutenant Chen. Without hesitation, she threw herself into the line of fire, taking a painful hit to her side. The world blurred, but Kara's focus never wavered. She dragged herself to cover, signaling for medics while urging her team to press forward. The strike was a success, the network crippled, the threat diminished. But Kara's injury was serious. Back at base, she was rushed to the medical bay, the pain intense but familiar. As she lay recovering, her team gathered around her bedside. Mitchell, now a trusted friend, squeezed her hand. "You saved me twice," he said quietly. "I owe you more than I can say." Kara smiled weakly, the weight of the moment sinking in. This mission had tested everything: her body, her mind, her heart. General Hawthorne visited again, her eyes reflecting a mix of pride and concern. "You've done more than serve," she said softly. "You've led, inspired, and sacrificed." "Your scars are badges of honor." Kara looked at her reflection later, tracing the fresh wound beneath her uniform. The scars were more than injuries. They were the map of a warrior's journey. She knew the road ahead would be long, filled with healing and hard choices. But Kara Morgan was ready. Phoenix would rise, again and again, from every trial, every battle, and every scar left behind. The world outside the hospital window was waking up to a crisp, clear morning. Kara lay in the quiet room, her body still bruised, her spirit weary but unbroken. The bullet wound had been stitched up, but the battle inside her was far from over. Her thoughts drifted to the faces of her team, the ones who'd risked everything alongside her. She wondered how many of them carried scars as deep, some visible, others hidden beneath the surface. Recovery was slow, and the physical pain was only part of it. Memories of the mission haunted her dreams. The close calls, the faces of civilians caught in the crossfire, and the weight of decisions made under fire, all carved into her mind like scars on her skin. She realized now that healing wasn't just about her body. It was about making peace with the past. Visitors came and went. Her mother's gentle voice and steady presence brought comfort, a reminder of home and unconditional love. But there was something else Kara needed, a purpose beyond survival. When the general arrived that afternoon, her eyes held a knowing look. "The military wants to honor you," she said softly. "A ceremony is being planned." "Recognition from the highest ranks. You've earned it." Kara hesitated. The thought of standing in front of a crowd, being praised, felt strange. She had never sought glory. Her scars told a story of sacrifice, not pride. But the general's words resonated. Recognition wasn't just for her. It was for every woman and man who fought, who endured, who refused to be forgotten. The days leading up to the ceremony were filled with preparation and reflection. Kara revisited letters from fellow soldiers, messages of thanks from families saved by their mission. Each word was a thread weaving her story into the larger tapestry of sacrifice and courage. On the morning of the ceremony, the air was thick with anticipation. Flags fluttered in the breeze. The sharp clack of boots echoed on the parade ground. And the crowd gathered, military personnel, families, and dignitaries alike. Kara stood at attention, her scars visible beneath the sleeves of her uniform, a silent testament to the battles she'd faced. The general stepped forward, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "Today we honor Sergeant Kara Morgan, a leader whose courage, resilience, and sacrifice have saved lives and inspired us all." As medals were pinned to Kara's chest, a rush of emotions surged through her: pride, humility, and a deep connection to the legacy she was part of. But amid the ceremony's grandeur, a shadow lingered. Kara knew that the path ahead wasn't only about medals and honors. It was about mentoring the next generation, breaking down barriers, and ensuring that the scars of war didn't define but empowered. After the ceremony, Kara was approached by a young recruit, a woman with nervous eyes and trembling hands. "Sergeant Morgan," she whispered, "I want to be like you." Kara smiled, the weight of her journey reflected in that simple sentence. "You already have the strength. It's inside you. The scars, the stories, they make us who we are. But they don't limit what we can become." The recruit nodded, her resolve hardening. That night, alone in her quarters, Kara stared at her reflection once more. The scars on her arms glistened faintly under the dim light. They told a story of pain, endurance, love, and unyielding spirit. She thought of the recruit, the team, and the countless women who had come before her, carving a path through adversity. Kara knew this was just the beginning. The scars would always be there, but so would the fire inside her, the fire of a phoenix rising. Time and again, and as long as that fire burned, hope would never fade. The days that followed the ceremony were filled with a strange blend of calm and urgency. Kara returned to the base, but she was no longer just a soldier recovering from wounds. She was a symbol, a living testament to what resilience and courage could achieve. Her story had spread quietly through the ranks, inspiring whispers of respect and admiration among both veterans and new recruits. Yet Kara's mind was restless. The battlefield wasn't behind her. It had transformed. Now, her fight was about legacy, mentorship, and breaking down walls that still lingered in the military's toughest corners. One morning, Kara received a call from the general's office. The voice on the other end was steady, but carried a sense of importance. "Sergeant Morgan, we want you to lead a new program, a mentorship initiative for female soldiers and veterans returning from combat. You understand sacrifice and recovery better than anyone. This program needs your voice." Kara felt a surge of pride mixed with responsibility. The scars she bore were no longer just physical. They were a bridge to others who struggled silently. She accepted without hesitation. The program began in a modest training facility on the edge of the base. Women from all walks of life gathered, young recruits fresh from basic training, seasoned veterans nursing their own battles, and even daughters of generals, all seeking guidance and strength. Kara spoke openly about her journey, the missions, the injuries, the doubts, and the victories. Her honesty broke down barriers. Women shared their stories, their fears, their hopes. The room became a sanctuary, a place where scars, both seen and unseen, were honored. One recruit, Emma, stood out. Young, determined, but haunted by the pressure to prove herself in a male-dominated world. Kara saw in Emma the same fire that had once driven her, tempered by fear and uncertainty. "You're stronger than you think," Kara told her one afternoon during a tough training exercise. "Scars don't make you weak. They make you real. They remind you what you've survived and what you can overcome." Emma nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I want to be like you, Sergeant. Not just in battle, but in life." The program flourished, expanding to include counseling, physical therapy, and leadership training. Kara worked tirelessly, her days filled with teaching, listening, and learning. Each woman she helped was a victory, each step forward a beacon of hope. But Kara's past was never far behind. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, shadows crept in. The memories of missions where friends were lost, the weight of sacrifices made, the faces of those who would never return. One evening, after a long day, Kara sat alone by the base's flagpole, watching the stars blink to life overhead. Her thoughts wandered to the recruit who had mocked her scars, their harsh words now a distant echo replaced by respect and unity. Her phone buzzed, a message from General Hawthorne. "Your strength is changing lives." "Proud of you," Kara smiled, feeling the warmth of connection despite the miles and battles between them. As months passed, the mentorship program became a cornerstone of the base's culture, a living legacy of courage and healing. Kara found purpose beyond the battlefield, a purpose that transcended medals and missions. One afternoon, as she walked through the training grounds, she spotted a group of recruits practicing drills. Emma was among them, moving with new confidence, her eyes shining with determination. Kara's heart swelled with pride. The scars they bore, physical or emotional, were no longer chains, but wings. The world was changing, one story at a time. Kara Morgan, once a recruit mocked for her scars, had become a beacon of hope, a leader whose courage echoed far beyond the battlefield. And as she looked toward the horizon, she knew the fight was never truly over. It was only evolving. But one thing remained certain. The phoenix would always rise.